Warm welcome to our viewers worldwide. I'm Carl Azus for CNN 10. First story we're explaining today concerns the United States, the nation of Turkey, and a group of Kurdish fighters near a Turkish border. Here's what's happening. The U.S. military had about 1,000 troops operating in northeastern Syria last month. Syria borders Turkey. But the Trump administration announced this week that American forces would be leaving the area. This is happening as Turkey plans what it calls a ground and air operation. The country says its goal is to establish peace by clearing out terrorists from the region. But here's where things get complicated. Some of the fighters that Turkey sees as terrorists may also be U.S. allies. We're talking about the Kurds. They're an ethnic group that lives in this part of the world. Some of them have been attacking Turkey's government for decades because they want their own country within Turkey. That's why Turkey and some other nations see certain Kurdish groups as terrorists. But there are Kurdish militias in neighboring Syria that have helped the U.S. defeat the Islamic State terrorist group there. These Kurdish militias are U.S. allies, and they're afraid that by moving American troops out of the region, the U.S. is turning its back on the Kurds and opening the door for Turkey to attack them. The American military says it and President Donald Trump do not endorse a Turkish military operation in northern Syria, and that the U.S. armed forces would not be involved. But Kurdish forces say a Turkish military operation would have a negative impact on the war against Islamic State and destroy stability in the region. What happens next depends largely on Turkey and what it actually does in Syria. 10-second trivia. The International Maritime Organization is an agency of what? The United Nations, the U.S. government, the European Union, or Interpol? The IMO was originally the Intergovernmental Maritime Consultative Organization when the UN established it in 1948. Glad they simplified that. According to the United Nations, shipping delivers more than 80% of the world's trade, and the IMO works to improve industry safety and reduce its pollution. A new limit on the amount of sulphur allowed in marine fuels is set to take effect in January. It's intended to decrease air pollution. The U.S. government expects that shipping fuel prices will increase next year and settle down afterward, but the shipping industry uses so much fuel every day that experts say its search for low-sulfur fuels could affect everything from the cost of driving to the cost of flying. Some shipping organizations are still trying to figure out how they'll adapt. Others are sailing ahead.
On Norway's west coast, the sea for centuries has delivered a bounty, from fisheries to oil to cruise tourism. But with big industry comes an impact on the environment, which cruise company Hurtigruten has been trying to offset with a new fleet of hybrid ships. The company's move to hybrid comes ahead of a sea change in the industry itself. Come January, sulfur from heavy fuel oil will have to be a fraction of what it was for decades, setting off a scramble in the industry for solutions. These engine rooms will soon be transformed to a new hybrid system, combining marine gas oil with electric battery packs and even biogas, produced from organic waste from Norway's fisheries and forests.
Our aim is to show that it's possible, that we can build the world's first hybrid-powered cruise ship with batteries, that we can be the first ones to start using biogas from a circular economy, and then we expect other ones to pick it up.
While Hurtigruten has a relatively small fleet and smaller vessels than the giant cruise liners, some holding 10 times the passengers, its CEO is hoping his company will have a giant role influencing the industry.
In Oakland, California, there's a studio whose artwork is sought after around the world. It's the largest nonprofit center of its kind. It's given tools and inspiration to hundreds of artists since it opened in 1974. But the true secret to its success is the artists themselves.
I remember my first experience of seeing this amazing production of art that was different than what I had seen, and it was such a personal expression by the person making it. They may or may not have had language, they may or may not have been able to communicate with me, but they're making this work that's really, a window into their soul. When you ask someone who's been disenfranchised their entire life to tell me your story, it's amazing how the door opens. Creative Growth Art Center is the oldest and largest center for artists with disabilities in the world. When we were founded, the idea of disability then was so radically different than what it is now. We didn't come out of a hospital setting, or we didn't come out of a vocational training program. We came out of some artists getting together in a home in Oakland, putting paint on a table in the garage, and just saying, this is what artists do, and this is how we can change the social fabric. From those kind of humble beginnings, we now serve 162 artists with disabilities in our studio every week. It's a very big space. Within that, you'll find almost every possible expression of visual art. You'll see the rug making area, the wood shop, the ceramic studio, the fashion area, the painting and drawing area, and everyone's working together and everyone can see each other. It's different than most places, and some people don't believe it. Some people think like you must have doctors and you must have all these other things. How do you deal with the studio every day? It's like, no, you know, art is the common language. And a lot of our folks don't verbalize or speak, or they speak sign language, but art is the language that moves us forward.
This is called the oil red seed #1. Red is the only color I can see.
You look at work of an artist like Dan Miller, you know, he's pretty much nonverbal. His mother tried to encourage him to speak by telling him how to spell words when he was a boy every night, and he never spoke them until he started to draw them.
Light, go, click, click, click.
Look at an artist like Monica Valentine. She takes pins and she takes sequins and colored beads and she strings those together on the pin and she puts them into styrofoam forms to form these optically charged sculptures. When you realize that Monica has prosthetic eyes and can't see color or see anything, it moves into this whole other range. We want their own voice. We want it as pure and personalized as it can be. And 45 years later, it continues to work. How's that building coming along, Pete? It's looking good. The record of success that Creative Growth has is phenomenal. It's off the charts in terms of what an art school or any other sort of enterprise would consider to be acceptable. We have 3 artists with work in the Museum of Modern Art Permanent Collection in New York and the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art Collection. And this year, we have the first 2 people with developmental disabilities that have worked in the Venice Biennale. The Venice Biennale is the most important, prestigious, by invitation only exhibition in the world. Their work is sought after. You know, a piece is done and there's a waiting list. Rosina, I haven't even said hello to you yet today. How are you? To be able to work at a place like this is beyond anything I had hoped for. I get to work with phenomenally talented people and to see how they negotiate the day every day, how they get around obstacles, how they continue to say yes when everyone is telling them no, that's an amazing thing. That's a life lesson I get reminded of every single day.
In keeping with our art theme, we present to you pumpkin carving underwater because it's autumn in the Florida Keys. This was a competition among dozens of artists who worked in teams of 2 to carve out their best jack-o'-lanterns. The prize was a free dive trip in Key Largo, and this might be harder than you think because pumpkins are naturally buoyant, so the carvers had to keep them from floating away while they worked. It's not always easy to scuba out a pumpkin, and if your skill set doesn't stem from deep-seated creativity, you gotta be careful not to get waterlogged with frustration and just flip your lid. You just take a deep breath, dig in, and carve out something nifty. You'll be sure to do a really good job. I'm Carvel Azus for CNN 10.